morning, gentlemen. Good morning, and it's a lovely Tuesday morning here in Las Vegas. I am honored to have both of you on stage with me, and I love to do this because obviously this conference is full of bank and payments people, but going and getting the technical perspective is a lot of fun. So we are going to be talking about AI, shocker, from two people who have literally helped invent the game, so I cannot wait to do this. Shawn, if you don't mind, let's have a quick start with you. You have an incredible career, and it's always been at the intersection of technology and human behavior, which is something that we talk about a lot here because you can't have the tech without the human. You've been at Thomson Reuters, Intel, Qualcomm, and now is your current role of CTO of Rocket. Can you just, a lot of this industry knows who you are, but I will tell you, not everyone does. So can you talk, outside of your Super Bowl commercials, so can you talk a little bit more about Rocket's mission and how technology kind of sits at the basis of everything that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me. When I joined Rocket about a year and a half ago, a big part of it was because of the mission, right? And the mission is pretty simple, but pretty powerful. It's to help everyone home, right? We see ourselves as a home ownership platform, helping people from home search all the way through to getting your financing and then effectively paying your mortgage through servicing. And homeownership it's a beacon of stability. It's a source of generational wealth. It's an important mission to get right. But 65% of Gen Z homeowners cried during the process of getting a home. So it's pretty broken. There's some work to be done there. And as I learned more about the industry, a lot of the friction points that are creating those tiers are things that AI and technology can help solve. And so our mission is to really take that technology, get those tiers out of the way and let people kind of achieve their dream of homeownership.
I love that. I'm not exactly Gen Z, but I will say I did cry during the homeownership process. And obviously working at the epicenter of tech and banking, I was like, how is this so freaking hard? And why is it taking weeks on weeks? And I've sent this document 4 times. Like, why am I sending it again? Okay, that's a really nice basis to start. Bret, let's go over to you. You are a legend. I'm just going to say it. You've built platforms that have changed billions of people's lives. Google, Facebook, co-CEO of Salesforce. You've also founded a lot of startups. I think you're a gluttony for punishment or something, because now we're back at startup number 3 with Sierra. Can you talk a little bit more about what made you do startup number 3 and why Sierra?
So thanks for having me, and Shawn, it's been so great to partner with you at Rocket, and your mission is really inspiring. It really is. So we started Sierra with the idea that AI agents aren't simply a tool for automation, but a great tool for customer experiences. And we really believe that if you fast forward 3 or 4 years, a company's AI agent will be as meaningful as their website or their mobile app in driving engagement with their customers. The neat thing about AI agents is they're not just chatbots. They can pick up the phone and digitize probably the last analog channel available. They can talk over smart speakers. They can talk over WhatsApp. But the thing that's been so exciting, in particular in partnering with Rocket, is agents conform to you rather than forcing you to conform to the digital interface. If you think about a website, a legacy website, 2 years old, it was a menu of options and a bunch of forms and fields and error messages about why it rejected whatever PDF you uploaded when you were trying to refinance your home. And instead, with an AI agent, you can ask questions. It can be multilingual. It can be empathetic. And if you think about things like a considered purchase, and I would put purchasing a home the most considered of considered purchases, it's intimidating. People don't know what to ask. People are embarrassed to ask. People don't know what they can afford. The ability to have an AI agent that's consultative, that can handhold you through that process, really takes digital interfaces we think of as sort of inhumane and actually can create something that's more humane. And I think that's really exciting. So that's why we created the company, and it's been a real privilege to partner with a lot of financial services firms at this company, but particularly Rocket, because more than anything, as Shawn said, we think the idea that agents can actually improve the experience of being a homeowner and in particular help make people homeowners is probably the most inspiring project we've worked on as a company.
And that idea of making it humane is so important because, as you said, especially within financial services, talking about your income and all those things, it can be a bit vulnerable and a bit uncomfortable. So using a computer or AI for that feels a bit disconnected. I love that you brought up chatbots because so often those conversations start here. They say AI, and then it ends up going to the chatbot. But obviously, AI and enterprise, technology is much bigger than that. I love, Shawn, you spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you've publicly talked about AI not being this homogenous thing, but actually through phases. Can you talk a little bit about what those phases are and how you apply that logic at Rocket?
Yeah, so look, I'll explain this through an analogy with my 11-year-old son. I coach his flag football team, and anyone who's tried to get a group of 11-year-old boys to be orchestrated and to do things in a controlled fashion knows that it is not easy. And so one of the ways I overcome that is I have an incredibly simple playbook, right? Like 3 plays, very easy to run. And we try to practice them, execute them, and when they execute them well, we do better. When they don't, we do not as better. If you then supercharged my team, gave me professional athletes, NFL quality football players, I have no doubt they could execute that simple playbook flawlessly every time, and we'd have better results as a team. But that would kind of be a terrible utilization of that talent, right? The real power of that talent is I can now author a much more complicated playbook with sophisticated plays to produce better results and know that they're going to be executed well. And I think AI kind of proceeds in the same couple of phases. I think a lot of us today are taking our existing playbook and executing it faster, better, cheaper than we did before. And that's great. There's value in that. You should do that. But I think the real power comes from when you step back and realize, now that the constraints under which my playbook was authored are gone, what should the new playbook be? How do I reinvent the way that I do things, right? And Bret, you made the point, is that it's not just about automation, right? It's a better experience. But you only get that if you rip up how you did things before and think about building new. And I think that second phase is where we see a ton of benefit. We've saved over 1.1 million team member hours, right? We can reach 20% more clients with AI-driven text messages. All stuff in production that we're doing today. But it causes us to have to rethink how we do things rather than just executing what we did before better.
So we are sitting here at the epicenter of finance and tech, and I love how we're all on our kicks up here. Bret, I'm going to go over to you because you're both techies. Clearly, this is your job. We got to talk about risk, because when I am spending time in conversations with executives of the incumbent financial services, a lot of time this comes up in the risks inherent or implicit as it relates to AI. And the thing about AI is it is non-deterministic, and you can't necessarily guarantee the outcome. How are you making sure that the systems that Sierra and that you guys are creating are doing what they're supposed to do and doing so responsibly? Like, how are you mitigating risk, basically?
I'll start with the technical, and then I'll talk a little bit about the social and compliance part of it. But let's start with the technical. So there was a great quote from the gentleman who wrote the Whole Earth catalog in the late 60s, which is, the solutions to most problems in technology is more technology. And so one of the techniques with AI is actually having AI supervise the AI. And it sounds funny, like, how does that work? Well, it's almost like proofreading an email. And if you think about it quantitatively, if you have an AI model that's right 90% of the time, most models are much more accurate than that, but just for even numbers, and you have a model that can supervise that model with 90% accuracy, if you chain those together, you'll get 99% accuracy. And so as you think about reasoning and the really sophisticated models, layering them on top of each other, you can get really much higher quality robustness. And something that surprises a lot of people, if you call one of our agents or you talk to something like the Rocket Mortgage agent or SiriusXM or ADT Home Security, our agents will often do 10 or 15 inference calls for one turn of the message, which surprises people, but it is really all about safety. Another thing that we think about is simulations. You don't want your customers to encounter the first problem with your agent. And simulations are roughly what it sounds like, but you can think of it as almost a regression test suite for your agent. Can you simulate phone calls with background noise, with strong accents, with different languages? AI can do all of that. So you can simulate car horns, televisions on the background, which as an AI person, televisions in the background is the bane of my existence. It turns out to be really hard. But you can simulate all of that so that before every release of your agent, AI is sort of battle hardening your AI before your customers encounter problems. But the thing a lot of boards ask me for advice on AI adoption, and I've been on a number of public company boards. And I would say, as you're thinking about risk, I would not demand perfection from your AI because I think it's impossible. As you mentioned, AI is non-deterministic. I think you should really think about when your AI does something incorrect, How do you find out, and how do you mitigate it? It's the same way you think about controls with your people. If you think about being a public company, what do you do from the end of the quarter close to reporting your earnings? You'll have people audit your contracts and verify that it abides by your revenue recognition rules. And you're not assuming perfection. In fact, the opposite. You're actually trying to find the imprecise moments and mitigate those things. I actually think you should think about AI in the same way. If you assume perfection, you'll never get there. It's sort of boiling the ocean, which is a term Shawn and I use a lot in tech. You really want to say, let's assume it's imperfect and use a lot of our existing controls to mitigate it. And I think when teams do that, they'll realize people are imperfect too. AI is actually probably more precise than operationally, quantitatively than your people. And many companies already have the tools in place to mitigate these risks. And I think with that mindset, it often can unlock, I think, a lot of the velocity of adoption.
Love that. So we've done a bit with both of you, but let's talk more specifically about this partnership. And you started, Shawn, talking about 65% of Gen Zs being brought to tears through that process. I've personally covered a fair amount of Rocket, and I know that you were an early adopter of technology and AI, and that really has enhanced so many things. You talked about the 1.1 million hours of team time that's been saved. From your perspective, what have you learned and what have you seen as it relates to AI adoption across Rocket? Because you've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, and look, I think AI is not new, right? It's been there for some time. We've been using it for some time, but generative AI and now agents are a whole new thing, right? And they've unlocked a whole new set of powers that we can kind of tap into. And this is where I still remember when we first met the Sierra team. In my role, I have to think about not just building the first version of the software, but maintaining it, making sure it works, making sure we improve it. And so as we started to get into building agents, the one thing we found very quickly is this is not like building other software. Right? You get the non-determinism, you get new foundation models coming out that you have to update, you need to simulate all of these things that Bret kind of mentioned earlier. It's a much different approach to software development, it's harder. And it was clear that the Sierra team had done a great job of thinking through that and giving us a platform that we could kind of rapidly build these agents off of. And so I think we learned pretty early on that was that wasn't a challenge we had to overcome, and this partnership's been incredible for that. And we're doing 400,000 chats a month now and 1 million outbound calls a month together off the back of that platform. But to something that Bret said earlier is it's not automation, right? It's about a better experience. And what we see is, again, the data that we have that tells us we're delivering and maybe getting rid of some of those tiers is if you come to refinance your mortgage through chat, you're 2.5 times more likely to convert and actually purchase a product from us, 3 times more likely for purchase for if you're purchasing a home. And that's just a better experience for clients. Together we just shipped last week where if you're in the market for a home, you can go and get pre-qualified so you know what you can actually go and offer on fully digitally through our digital agent, right, that we've built together. That's just a better experience, right? And so the approach to development, the approach to our business processes has to change. But my goodness, the power we're unlocking and what that does for these clients to hopefully help in that process is pretty phenomenal.
I love all the data you're sharing. I'm a data nerd, so this is fun. This is a question for both of you. Maybe if you can start, Shawn. Back to the conversations, and I know, Bret, you alluded to some of the board moments that you've had. For our audience, for this industry, how, from a technical perspective in particular, how do you separate hype versus reality? Like, what's actually happening, what's real, and what's not?
I think that there's always hype. Whenever there's something powerful out there, there's going to be hype. But make no mistake, there is real value. The numbers that I'm quoting are real things helping real clients trying to find homes today. And I think that if you think of these as just powerful tools, I think as long as you start with a problem, you start with a real problem in the clients that you're serving, and you work backwards from there. You don't start with AI, but I will say that if you look at all your client problems and none of your solutions involve AI, you're probably missing something. And so it's an incredibly powerful tool you've got to use. And I think the way you take it out of hype is you go ship it. Right? You get out of the sandbox as quickly as you can, you put it in real people's hands, and you iterate. Right? I mean, when we shipped the first versions of our agent, what I loved about the teams working together is they'd be on a call all night, quickly seeing the feedback that was coming in, quickly seeing the data, and making changes in real time. Right? And that again goes back to we're building software faster and more in a different way than we did before. But if you don't put it out in the wild, if you don't get it out there, it will just stay as this hype thing, this kind of sandbox thing that kind of sits on the side. So my view is this is real. There's real power here, but you got to put it in the hands of your users and learn from them, and then you'll see the reality.
I have a name for that when you don't ship it to users, AI tourism.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
It's, there's so many boards and CEOs saying, give me an AI strategy, and you can often do proofs of concept that never make their way to your clients. And it becomes a game of posturing in politics rather than improving customer experiences. And as Shawn said, I think we've obviously drinking the Kool-Aid pretty deeply on this, but when your clients use these agents and they have a delightful experience, they thank the AI at the end, which happens a lot.
It's great.
You realize this is actually just a better experience. It's always on, it's patient, it's multilingual, you don't have to wait on holds. All these things are just so much better, and I think once you see the joy of using these experiences through your clients' eyes, it unlocks a lot. And so I just couldn't, just plus one to what Shawn said, which is launch it. Launch these things in production, partner, obviously self-interested in this, partner with customers like ours that can help guide you, but whether or not you partner with us, try it out, use it in production, and I think if you do, that's where the real lessons come from.
It's such an interesting point that you started on that with that too, because there's so often where people are sitting there, it's like, this is technology without a problem. So starting with the problem, then you build the solutions to help solve that. Okay, this one is a big one. We're going to go a little bit more in the future here. As two of the people who have really helped to set the foundation for this industry, if we think about how much AI has evolved in the last 7 to 8 months, put your future hat on. We're talking 3 to 5 years. What does AI look like from now? Where should we be making our bets? What does it look like 3 to 5 years from now?
Our running joke is it's hard to predict 3 months from now, let alone 3 to 5 years from now. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think to Bret's point, we talk about this all the time, and it's like months are like years now in terms of how quickly this is evolving. But I think if you play it forward, I think probably in a lot of the industries in financial services, a lot of parts of financial services, going back to my playbook analogy, you're limited by capacity, right? And you build a whole business around, I have finite capacity here, and so how do I build business to deal with that constraint? And that could be your call center, that could be your sales team, that could be how you process things in your back office. There's all kinds of these constraints, and when you step back, you realize that so much of your energy is spent dealing with those constraints rather than serving your clients. And I actually think before the 3 to 5 years, if you take where agents are kind of going and as they become more powerful, you'll have basically infinite capacity. And I know that sounds sort of crazy, but I think it's right. I think when you now basically say, what if I could basically serve all of my clients at the same time, any time of day, how would I reinvent my business? And so I think infinite capacity is a real thing. I think it is going to come as these tools evolve and get better. And the next part of that is once you hand the agents data, right? So we always pride ourselves on we have 30 petabytes of data that see this homeowner all the way through the process. And that's going to allow us at every one of those touch points to serve them in a really hyper-personalized way. So I think you have this infinite capacity, and you have the ability to make every touch point exactly what the client wants. Again, sounds hyperbolic, but you just think about what experience you create for that. You think about how you reinvent your business, and it's exciting.
All right, last, because we talked a bit about, the advice being start now. So as you said, okay, fine, 3 years, you want to do 3 months. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being in infancy, 10 being we're there, I'm curious where you both think we are on the AI journey between 1 to 10.
I think we're in the relatively early stages. I think we're sort of internet pre-broadband. And what I mean by that is we still have a lot of technology to develop, but sort of riffing on what Shawn said, we haven't really operationalized AI agents within our company to really unlock that infinite capacity. ChatGPT is amazing, but I think we will evolve where agents will perform on our behalf as individuals, and I think it will impact a lot of businesses, particularly financial services, where a lot of interactions are being done through personal agents to company agents. No joke, one of our agents at Sierra has already made a phone call to another one of our agents, and I think it's amusing. It happened over the publicly switched telephone network, which is a funny juxtaposition of technology eras, but it is, I think, a glimpse of the future. And in particular, going back to this idea of how limitless this can be, it's hard to imagine going into a room and not being able to turn on a light switch and get power. I think for our children, it will be hard for them to imagine not having a super intelligence in their pocket. And I think it took a while to really get to the second and third order effects of plentiful, food distribution, electricity, the idea that we'll have plentiful intelligence, access to expertise, which is particularly relevant in the financial services industry. I don't think we're there yet. I think people are still grappling with the sort of first order effects of this technology. So I think, we were talking backstage about, is it a bubble, which is a question both of us get as the resident geeks in our social circles. I think it probably is, but I also think, like most bubbles, it's actually because of the authentic excitement about what it's going to do to the economy, which I think will truly transform society.
Love it. Any last thoughts? Are you ready to go?
No, I think Bret said it well. We're in the early innings, but I think those late innings are going to be absolutely exciting. So buckle up.
Amazing. Shawn, Bret, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.